Here is the Crescendo Music Education Podcast, episode number 75. This podcast is being recorded on the lands of the Turrbal people. I acknowledge them as the traditional owners of the land and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. They were the first music makers on this land. Hello, I'm Debbie O'Shea and welcome to this Crescendo Music Education Podcast. This is part one of my chat with Vaughan Fleischfresser. We talk about quite a few things. We start off as usual with his biography and hear a little about what he's done and interestingly about his fame through Twitter. And many of you would have seen his social media posts where he talks about the importance of music education. I loved having a chat to Vaughan. Hello and welcome to Vaughan Fleischfresser from, where are you now? Edinburgh.
Yeah, well, I'm just south of Edinburgh, but yeah, I say Edinburgh, yes.
Okay. Well, welcome from the other side of the world to the Crescendo Music Education Podcast. It is a delight to be chatting to you.
Well, thanks very much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be with you.
Yay! From your old stomping grounds here in Australia. All right, I like to start by reading a biography and then we can just launch from there. So here is a little bit of background on Vaughan for all of my lovely listeners. Originally from Australia and now residing in Scotland, Vaughan has taught from primary through to university level, instrumental through to community music and everywhere in between. Makes me think of that song, Vaughan, I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere.
Yes,
Anyway,
that is quite accurate, yes.
it does read a bit like this. He currently teaches at the Edinburgh Academy and he conducts the Peebles. Is it pronounced Peebles?
Yes, yep, Peebles, yep.
It's a very cute name, Peebles.
It is, it's a very lovely little town, yes.
Oh, good. The Peebles Concert Band and Peebles Burr Silver Band. In addition
Borough.
to this, it's a borough.
Yeah,
Oh dear. Look, I knew I'd stuff something up.
it's all good.
In addition to this, Vaughan is in great demand as a clinician, adjudicator, composer, and educational speaker, having spoken in conferences in Australia, Scotland, England, South Africa, and Canada. Okay, I got through that without any other big faux pas. So back to you, Vaughan. Now, listening to that's obviously your very brief bio. What would you like to add?
Well, I think I've been very fortunate to travel the world and to live and work in different places, and with that, I've had to become quite versatile. I think to be able to make it wherever I've been at the time that I've been there. So I think the thing I've really enjoyed the most about my career is just the versatility that I've seen and the breadth of experience that I've had. I remember in one school, 1 minute I was teaching kindergarten at 9 o'clock, and then I was teaching year 12 at 10 o'clock. A few years ago, I was teaching grade 1 on a Monday, and then university students on a Tuesday. On a Wednesday, I conduct a beginner band in the afternoon, and then come home and conduct a community band. So I think in terms of my career, the real highlight for me, and just something to add, is, I've really seen the whole student journey from 3 to 93, as I like to say, and it's been a real pleasure.
Yes, and not many of us get to work with that huge age range. So that is something special to see the whole journey. It would be hard, I imagine, or difficult, but would you have a sort of a favourite level to teach?
Well, yes, and that's changed throughout my career. When I was in secondary teaching, I loved teaching. Well, at that stage, when I left Australia, grade 8 was still the first high school year, and I loved teaching those first years of high school because I'm always of the opinion that that's kind of one of the last points we've got to capture them before they can be lost to their adolescence and their interests. So I always loved teaching that year level. And then when I moved into primary, I absolutely loved the youngest ones because I thought, what a privilege this is for some of them. You are their very first ever experience of not just formal education, but potentially music education. So yeah, I have to say, whichever phase I'm teaching in, the very start of that phase, I think, is my favorite because it's well, you don't build a house from the roof down; you build it from the foundations up.
Oh, I could not agree more. And I agree, it's an absolute privilege to be part of laying those foundations.
Hmm.
Because whatever is laid there, it's there permanently. So
Yep.
if we can do a good job there, yeah, I agree. That's wonderful. And it also sounds like you're never bored.
No, no, I like to keep busy. Well, as I always say, it's better to be busy than bored, except
It's
I'm coming to the end of a 7-week holiday with 2 young children, so I wish I was bored rather than busy. But yes, I think, well, and that's the beauty, I think, of music teaching is there's it's a lifelong endeavor
Mm.
learning music, and so there are so many wonderful opportunities and wonderful experiences to have. And I think, whilst many of us specialize in different areas, I think to understand that pupil journey and we call it pupil in Scotland rather than student, um, and to experience that at every step along the way, it really helps you to inform what you're doing, and to we'll talk about the 7 habits later on. Begin with the end in mind. Where do we want our young people to end up? What experiences do we want them to have with music when they get into adulthood, and all of these things. So yeah, I think it's important to dip your toes in every aspect of music education, because it helps to inform the one that you're doing at that point in time.
Well, that's a great philosophy. I love it. And I have witnessed over my career some music educators who focus a little too much on the subject rather than the child. I mean, we all need to, oh goodness, we need to be well trained in our subject and our pedagogy. I know that, but
Hmm.
we cannot lose sight of the child and the journey, because
Yes.
that's the rest is irrelevant if the child and the journey is not taken care of first. So that's a
Hmm.
great reminder for us all. Keep your eye on that. I love it. Thank
Yes.
you, Vaughan.
Oh, my pleasure.
What would you consider the highlight or highlights of your journey, your very varied journey as a musician educator?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've had many wonderful highlights, and it's interesting you say as a composer. I've only become a composer, well, of late. I mean, obviously teaching composing, I think it's important to compose music, and I'm very big on improvisation in the classroom. For me,
Oh,
that's obviously real time composing. And so I think my highlight was having my first piece of beginner concert band music published with Brolga Publishing. I never thought that would happen, but as I conducted more and more beginner concert bands, there's only a certain amount of repertoire one can find that uses 5 notes. So I the more I conducted young bands, the more I'd be driving, and then random little tunes would come into my head, and I started to put them down. And yeah, so I've got a couple of pieces published for beginner concert band, which is a real highlight. In terms of a musician, I'm a saxophonist by trade, and so I've had some wonderful experiences playing the saxophone. And again, from a music teaching perspective, I think it's really important that we as music teachers continue to make music ourselves, to continue to be in groups, to continue to create our own music, because that keeps us connected with what we're doing with our young people. So when I was in Australia, I was lucky enough to get to perform with Pete Murray, the singer-songwriter, and I got to record on some of his albums. Over here in the UK, I've been lucky to perform in some very, very big music festivals. But then for me, the biggest highlight has really been using my saxophone to connect with people all over the world. I tell this story. When I first moved to Scotland, I was here for 2 days, and I knew no one other than uh, my girlfriend at the time, who I moved here with. And I went to the Edinburgh Jazz Bar and went to a jam night, instantly made friends. The next night I went to a community wind band rehearsal, instantly made friends. So having that ability to use music to connect with people all over the world, I think, has been a real highlight for me, in addition to the others.
oh, that's also pointing to the power of music, isn't it?
Hmm.
That's
Yeah,
amazing. Well, we will. I didn't fully know about your compositions there. So can we? I'll get you to email me the link to those, and we'll pop them in the show notes, because
sure.
all of my instrumental music colleagues, I know always looking for beginner band pieces, like you said, really, when they've got their first 5 notes and you've got them together as a band going, oh my goodness. And sometimes there'll be a popular one and you'll hear every junior band play it. You go, oh, here we go. We've got this one
Smiling
again.
through gritted teeth, yes.
So thank you. I know it's a much needed area. So we'll put the links in the show notes for that. That would be fabulous. We'll look into that. And anything,
Great.
I do like to ask my guests about gratitude, because I think that's an important part of staying connected to the human and educator journey. Is there anything you'd like to say about personal gratitude and professional?
Well, I always think that whenever I'm adjudicating at a festival or whether I'm comparing a concert or a festival, I cannot thank the parents enough. You know, when I think of gratitude, I instantly think of my parents, you know, what they sacrificed to give me the music education that I had. I mean, as I keep saying to everyone around the world, in Queensland, we are so lucky to have the music education system that we have. I mean, the ease that a young person can learn an instrument in school is world class. But my parents went above and beyond that. They got me private lessons. They bought me every piece of music I needed. They bought me every instrument that I needed. Um, and it's and then to think I got to that stage in early high school where I didn't want to practice, and you know, I was shouting at my parents for making me practice. I think I even told my mum once that I hated her for making me practice, and now, you know, I cannot thank her enough. I mean, I was just in Australia recently visiting them, and the number of times I said thank you to them, you know, I lost count, because it's one of those things where when you come out the other side and you realize that it's your thing, and the impact it can have on every aspect of your life. I mean, what parents go through and sacrifice to give their children a music education is immense. And then just I think in terms of professional gratitude, it's just I think the whole music education community around the world is just a wonderful community. You know, everyone looks out for each other. Everyone wants the best for the young people that we get to impart our passion on. And so I think I've just been incredibly grateful to everyone I've met. I mean, I've been very lucky to travel the world, and everywhere I've gone, you know, that music, that love of music, is a real wonderful connector and a real inspirer to make a difference. So yeah, I'd have to say parents and colleagues are my
Oh,
two gratitudes.
I love it. I love it. And yes, so understandable. And you mentioned about the Queensland program. Before we go on to the next thing that I would like to talk about, can I just ask you about Queensland and your
Hmm.
schooling here? And did you come up through the state school system?
Yeah,
So can
yeah.
you give
So
us a bit of a background on that one?
sure, I grew up on a farm just outside of Kingaroy, about 3.5 hours inland from Brisbane. I was to be a fifth generation farmer, but my parents encouraged me to follow music. So I went to Cumbia State School, and at that time there wasn't an instrumental teacher there. I now know the instrumental teacher from Kingaroy goes out to Cumbia, but we had a fife band, one of few fife bands that were in the state of Queensland. So there was about 30 of us with our fifes marching around the parade ground with a couple of kids on drums. So that was my first experience of an instrument. And then my parents wanted us to learn an instrument, so we learnt the saxophone. And then I went on to Kingaroy High School for year 8, 9, and 10. So I learnt there in group lessons and played in all the bands. And then I wanted to become a music teacher. I decided that at the early age of grade 7. And unfortunately, in my year 11 year at Kingaroy High School, not enough people had chosen music for it to be offered as a subject.
Oh,
So
no.
my parents, this is where I come back to gratitude. They somehow managed to send me to St. Peter's Lutheran College at Indooroopilly for year 11 and 12. I went to boarding
Yes.
school.
They have a very big music program, don't they?
Yeah,
Mm.
so I went there, and then I was able to go to QYO on Friday nights, and you know, tap into the Young Conservatorium program and all of that through those 2 years at St. Peter's. And then I went on to QUT, did a music degree there, then a education degree, and I started at Cooperoo Secondary College. That's where I started out for my first few years of teaching, and then I started on my travels.
Wow. Okay. Oh, well, it's so nice to be speaking to a fellow Queensland trained person. That's lovely.
Indeed, yeah. Hmm.
Now, I would like to talk Twitter.
Or X, as it's now called.
Sorry, yeah, I'd like to talk X.
I'm happy for you to keep calling it Twitter. I think it's anyway. That's another conversation.
Oh, no, yeah, different conversation. But it was certainly Twitter when you became, I'm going to use air quotes, known more widely. And most music educators have probably seen your thoughts somewhere shared on the socials. Like how did that all happen? Like there's a picture of your face, it's a white background, and it's text.
Yes.
As someone who loves playing with graphic design and social media posts, and anyone who's seen the crescendo stuff, I have my watercolors and all the pretty, and here's Vaughan with his white background and his black text saying what lots of us think. I mean, actually, I think that's probably what it's actually all about, is you're just saying what we think. Like that, I'm probably oversimplifying that, but
No.
so yes, so tell us all about Twitter.
Well, it's it's been a fascinating experience and quite a bizarre one, to say the least. But to come back to what you said, I think the reason why it's gone the way it has is because of that idea that I seem to just say what people think, and that's been the most humbling thing. The number of people who've just said everything I write just seems to resonate with them. And if my English teacher knew now that I was being known for writing in English, if only my assignments were 240 word characters or less.
Yes.
But I mean, I started on Twitter in 2011 just for no other reason than it was something to check out, and then it turned into just my newspaper. I only followed news channels. I didn't really tweet at all. But then I've moved around a lot. I moved from Australia to Scotland, Scotland to America, America to Scotland, Scotland back to Australia, Australia back to Scotland. And with my name and with my broad experiences, to many people, I appear to be a made-up person. And so the second time I moved to Scotland, I was finding it hard to get a job back in teaching. I'd moved back at a strange time. I think I'd maybe moved one too many times, and I did start to appear to be a made-up person. So I just was in a period where I was missing teaching terribly, and I just wanted to express my love of teaching and to try and make people aware that I was in fact a real person with real thoughts. Because in the UK and America, Twitter is very big for education. It's a really what's probably the main way that educators connect and share their work and whatnot. So when I realized that, I thought, well, why not? I'm just going to start putting my thoughts out into the universe and see what happens. And not a lot happened, but then people started to meet me and started to read my thoughts, and it started to build. And then one night, a couple of years ago, I tweeted one tweet I call my alternate universe tweet. It was: the music department is an alternate universe where pupils are often unrecognizable from who they are outside of it. The shy become confident, the agitated become calm, the lonely become included, the quiet become heard, and the lost become found. Music reveals the real child. And so I tweeted that one night, went to bed, and I woke up the next morning and I had gone, I believe the word is viral. I had friends from all over the world contacting me saying, Vaughan, you need to check your Twitter, you need to check your Facebook, you're everywhere. And that kind of set it off on the path that it is now, where, I think I'm nearly coming up to 10,000 followers on Twitter. I've got 2.5, I think, on Facebook. It's just really, really bizarre, but also humbling. Classic FM now share my thoughts, and lots of other big music education and music websites share my thoughts. If people are sending me pictures of all of my quotes on their music department wall or their door or their staff room wall, it's been pretty crazy, but it's very humbling. It just goes to show how important music is to people, and how important music education is to people, and how passionate music educators are about what we do and the benefit of it and the importance of it. So I was doing a podcast for someone in America once, and they asked me, do you realize the the responsibility that you have now, and the kind of the power that you have now. And it's not lost on me. Before I tweet anything, I sit there and I think about it for ages, because it's read by a lot of people, and it means a lot to a lot of people. So yeah, it's been a crazy journey, but a nice one to meet and connect with a lot of people, get to speak to people like yourself, and yeah, it's been a wonderful journey.
Hmm. It's a lovely story. Thank you, Vaughan.
Yeah, that's all right.
Now, I knew of you, and we'd communicated through social media a little, I believe, through and then I met you in real life a few months ago. So at the Maryborough Music Conference, and I thought, oh, look, this is serendipity. I'm going to ask if he'd like to have a chat on my podcast. So that's how this came about. However, in that session that you did at the conference, you spoke of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey. And just for those people who maybe have not read it, and I have only read it half, I would have read it completely if I'd bought the audiobook instead of the hard copy, because it's the sort of book I consume the audio version of. I do a lot, but I bought this one hardcover because I thought, I think it's going to be important. No, not hardcover, sorry, hard copy. But
Yes.
I just have difficulty finding time to read it, but I am loving it. I'm about halfway through. So anyway, this has inspired me to go back. So those of you who haven't read it or have read it half, like me, Stephen Covey distills timeless wisdom into 7 lifelong practices for building a successful, fulfilling life. And this was just a summary of the habits that I found on the net, which you may put in different ways. So habit 1 was to take initiative. Habit 2, envision the life you want. Habit 3, prioritize important over urgent. Oh, goodness, that's hard to do in our job. Like when you get 100 emails a day and your work email, how do you prioritize? Anyway, sorry, back to the point. Prioritize important over urgent. Habit 4, seek mutual benefits. Habit 5, listen and understand the other first. Habit 6, collaborate to create possibilities. That one. Habit 7, practice self-renewal. So many people I listen to, many authors, many podcasters refer to these 7 habits. So I'm really interested in how you relate these teachings to music education.
Sure. Well, I'd never heard of this book until I did a Master's of Music Education at Vandercook College of Music in Chicago. And so in the North American system, I majored in concert band and minored in choir. And the president of the college at the time, Charlie Mangini, who co-authored the Essential Elements method book, took one subject, and the whole subject was based purely on this book. And at first I thought, I'm going to study a whole subject based on one book about essential. Well, at that time I thought it's one of these self-help books. What am I getting into? But then it really blew my mind. Now, yes, if you read the book, it's based from the business perspective,
Yes.
and it's his experiences in the business world, and it's very Americanized in many ways. But the core skeleton and structure of what the book imparts, I think, is really beneficial, not just to music teaching, but to professional life and personal life in general. So I hadn't really thought about it a lot until I ended up being the teaching fellow for music education at Edinburgh University. So for a couple of years, I was the entire music education department at Edinburgh University. So I was teaching the students who wanted to go on to be music teachers, both secondary and primary. And so I was thinking about, like departmental planning, semester planning, term planning, unit planning, rehearsal planning, concert planning, dealing with colleagues, dealing with difficult situations. And I thought, well, this book kind of ticks every single box. So I went back to the book, I read it again. I thought about it from the perspective of music teaching, and the students I taught at Edinburgh University really latched onto it, and and then after I'd start the year with it, and then throughout the year I'd be doing workshops or lectures, and then someone would yell out one of the habits because it pertained to exactly what we were talking about. Or when I'd go out and watch them in the school doing their placements, they'd say, "Oh yes, habit, whatever," and so it just became a real focal point for them to latch on to in that really challenging period of becoming a music teacher. And then having spoken to a lot of them now in their second, third, fourth, fifth year of teaching now, how they return to those 7 habits just to provide structure to thought and planning and whatnot. So for me, I think one of the challenges we face in music education is the second habit for me. When I read the book, it was called "Begin with the End in Mind." What is the end that we want for our young people? And there's so many different endpoints for music, and I think that's the problem. There's the end point of if they don't go on to choose music as a subject, or the end point if they go on to study it in the final couple of years of high school, or if they then go on to study it at university. There's all these different endpoints, and I think for me we need to begin with many different ends in mind, because the majority of young people we teach are actually the ones that don't go on to choose music as a subject. And so what is the end that we are giving them? What are we setting them off into the world with? What's their love of music? What's their understanding of music like? And then what does the end look like for those studying music? Do we want them to go on to get into the young then to the con? Do we want them to study, or do we just want them to have a more deeper understanding of music? So I think it's really important as music teachers, because we're always questioned, why music? Why music isn't important? Choose something else. Well, it is important, but I think we're our own worst enemies, where we don't focus on these different endpoints. We just get caught up in the drudgery of day-to-day teaching. So I think that's a really important one. And also, when I come to advocacy, I use this a lot. The fourth habit, which seek mutual benefits. When I was reading the book, it was think win-win. Every interaction has an outcome. It's either win-win, lose-lose, win-lose, or lose-win. And often when we're fighting for what we know is right, we can go in too hard, and we don't get that win. And it's tied in really nicely with the next habit, that listen and understand the other first, which I know is seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Yes.
There's always a reason. There's always a reason why music education is questioned and challenged, and usually it's time, money, and a lack of understanding. But it's important that we understand where those people are coming from, so that we can think win-win. And that that takes some humility. It takes some give and take. So I think it's really important from that advocacy perspective, and then also just providing the best opportunities for the people we teach. Habit 6, collaborate to create possibilities. Again, I was taught it was synergize, which basically means create.
These, I must say, the ones I read out is just a summary that I found.
Oh, I see. Okay, right.
Not
I'm with you.
titles. Sorry, I should
I
have said that.
thought the book had been updated since I read it.
No. So I should have put in the actual titles, but I found this little summary and I just popped that in.
No, well,
so it's a
they're a lot better.
summarization, I guess.
Sure. But I think that collaborate to create possibilities, that's one of the amazing things about music is in schools, music's in the community, music's everywhere. And that was what I remember growing up. A great thing about growing up in Queensland was, the school band would go out and perform in the community. You'd perform at the local markets, or you'd go and perform in a nursing home or whatnot. That real connection with community. But also you've got wonderful organisations like the orchestras and local composers and whatnot. All these wonderful things that can help to expose young people to the breadth of music education and the possibilities within music education. I mean, I've spoken a lot at conferences in England at the moment, where they're looking at true inclusivity. What does that look like? And acknowledging the fact that band, choir, and orchestra is very important, but that doesn't capture everyone. And as I like to say, a lot of the people who make careers out of music learn the guitar in their garage and then go on to make their own bands and music and tour the world and possibly haven't even come into one of our classrooms, or those who go on to become record producers and teach themselves on a computer at home. All of these possibilities, it's something I think that we need to think outside the square to really capture everyone, and to make sure that wherever the end point is for those that we teach, it's meaningful and it sets them off into the world in a way that allows them to continue to engage with music for the rest of their life. Because I hate to think that someone leaves my classroom and then that's it. If they leave school, that's it. They listen to music maybe in the car and that's it. They don't consume it. They don't make it. They don't think about it. That's not what I want. So yeah, that's how I think the 7 habits can be used. But again, if you're thinking about planning a unit, what do you want them to know by the end? What do you need to do along the way? Think win-win. So pupil voice, talking to the kids. What do they want? Adding in what they need to know, in inverted commas. Listening to them, thinking of creative ways. It's just a wonderful format. And then the last one, sharpen the saw, which is basically have fun, make sure that you're not taking life too seriously, things like that. I think what we do also needs to be fun. We need to make sure that we don't get burnt out, because when we're burnt out, the quality of experience that our young people have is not good. So I just think they're a wonderful framework for almost every aspect of teaching. I really do, and it can be applied to any situation, I think.
Yes. Oh, I think it's a brilliant idea to use that as the framework. And it's so important. Oh, that the self-renewal, the sharpen the saw. I think that every music teacher listening should take a bit of note of that, because we so burn ourselves out, don't we?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we
But I
do.
mean,
No, go on. I was just going to
you,
say we do a much better job when we've had a good night's sleep and we've taken time to eat well and we've taken
uh-huh,
time to exercise.
very true. But then I was just thinking the other night, I started to get back into conducting one of my community groups, the brass band, which in Scotland they're called silver bands. And I went along to the rehearsal, and I was tired. I think I'd been swimming all afternoon with my kids. I'd had not much sleep the night before, and then I came out of that rehearsal, and I was just bopping down the street, like I was walking on cloud nine. And I was just reminded of that. I walked home that night and I just tweeted, the medicinal power of making music with other people is simply magical. Headache gone, blocked nose gone, sore muscles gone, lack of energy gone, random worries gone, emotionally drained gone. Making music together is so beneficial to our minds, bodies, and souls. And I really think that. I mean, I remember once I was doing a gig at the Brisbane Convention Centre and I had a migraine. And when I get migraines, like, that's me done for a day. But it was a massive gig. It was, again, performing with Pete Murray. So the convention centre was full of people. My parents were there, and I'm like, I'm not missing this. So I was backstage with a cold towel on my head in the corner in the fetal position, shaking. And then I went out on stage, performed for 45 minutes. Migraine? What migraine? I felt perfectly fine, went back off stage, and then it came back again. So as I say,
Oh,
music's better than paracetamol.
wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, so I think in terms of that sharpen the saw, that's why I come back to making music.
Mm.
Sing in a choir, play in a band. Yes, it takes time and effort to get there and do it, but it's like going to the gym. Getting there is half the problem, but once you've done, you feel fantastic again. And again, you're talking about the emails and the pressures of daily life. I think sometimes with teaching music, there are times when we can almost fall out of love with music because it becomes so much of a job. So it's important to remember those moments and those environments that made us fall in love with it in the first place.
Yes, that's wonderful advice. Nuggets of fabulous time. I like
Oh
my
yes.
nuggets of
Mhm.
fabulous. And you must have so much up your sleeve there, working with so
Well,
many people in so many situations. Although you've already given us a really, well, you've given me a really big tip. Like, I'm going to get back into these 7 habits, and um, I think that's a fascinating way to look at things. So there, you've already
mhm.
given us one,
Yeah,
but
yeah, there's one. Mhm.
but you've got to have other little ideas, little bits of repertoire or teaching tricks or whatever you like. that might interest all of our listeners?
Sure. Well, unfortunately, they both involve money. But during the pandemic, over here in Scotland, we weren't allowed to sing for about 15 months in primary
Oh,
schools
it's so sad.
at all. And that's actually when I came to know your wonderful community and started to engage with it, because I had to start creating videos because we had to provide online video lessons. So we didn't do live teaching. Right, I had to put together a 45-minute video lesson on iMovie. So I started to create lots of videos. I started to search the internet for possibilities, and I'm sure you're probably aware of this, but I came across a website called Music Play Online, which is from Canada,
Yes.
and Denise Garnier, and so that was a savior, an absolute savior for me. And there are so many of these online music curriculum and resources popping up all over the place, which I think many of them have their place because they're designed to help primary schools that don't have any type of music specialism in them, to help teachers to get that chance to engage in making music. But they're quite limited in that fact. Whereas for me, music play, I still haven't discovered everything on that. And it's kind of like the 7 habits. It's renewed my focus. It's given me refreshed ideas. It's reminded me of things that I have maybe forgotten, but it's also helped me to think of things in different ways. But the thing I love about it, and I'm really passionate about this, for me, with the kids we teach, music needs to be a habit, not a special event. So I'm really big on trying to get um, our kids to make music at home, to take the classroom home. It's like that flipped classroom idea. And so the thing I love about music players, the kids can access it at home on any device they want. They can play the games, they can sing along to the songs, and it just expands the classroom. So I love that. And for me, again, I'm not sure, in Queensland, are they starting to bring iPads into schools for the
Yes,
kids?
it generally it is. Our school has a one-to-one iPad from grade 4 up. Some schools have
Right.
iPads all the way through. Some are going more laptops, but I think
Sure.
iPads are more common. Yes.
Right. Well, for me, if GarageBand has been a game changer for me in my in
Yes.
my current role of teaching in primary schools. And yes, I understand that it's, the privilege of having the iPad and the resources, but I know a lot more schools are starting to do this one-to-one rollout. I mean, even in my local council here, my daughter, when she gets to grade 4, she'll get her own iPad. And I have found GarageBand to be astonishingly eye-opening in terms of being able to engage those kids that don't necessarily learn an instrument outside of school. Uh, and for me, I have found it amazing in the terms of it allows young people to show a level of music understanding that you wouldn't have known otherwise. So I constantly think of these 2 boys that I just taught last year in grade 6, who we started to use the iPads to compose blues melodies and Scottish melodies, and just looking at different structures. So using the Apple loops to create, binary, ternary, rondo form using their own loops. And these 2 boys, I wouldn't have thought. Well, until that point, I didn't know their level of music understanding because they hadn't had the opportunity through this wonderful tool of GarageBand to truly show it. And these two
Mm.
boys who don't learn any instrument wrote the best melodies. They understood structure the best. They showed it wonderfully. The way they were able to use structure and timbre and balance and all of these things was just astonishing. And I wouldn't have known these things if it weren't for the freedom of GarageBand to allow them to express their understanding in different ways. So a real big nugget for me is embrace music technology. I mean, again, it involves money and it involves upskilling because a lot of us grew up in a time when these things didn't exist. But if we're trying to make music truly inclusive and engage everyone, I mean, the possibilities there are just astonishing.
It is an amazing little program. One of the
Especially if you sorry,
no, go on.
especially if you're teaching Peter and
Mm.
the Wolf, you can get each kid to compose their own wolf with the French horn sound, and then the oboe sound, and then the bassoon sound, and then you can get them to create their own story through using their own motifs that they create. I mean, that's just one example. I get them to put in videos and create their own soundscapes to go along with pictures of pyramids for their pyramid theme. When they do World War II, I give them a silent film, which they create the soundtrack along to, and then you put it into iMovie, and they have their own World War II film night with the soundtracks they've created along with the film. I mean, when you have iMovie and GarageBand combined, that's a real nugget for me.
They're good ideas. Oh, I like those. The issue, well, I use some GarageBand a little, but the problem is when you have children a half an hour a week only, it's
Yes.
very difficult if you wish to also sing. I wish to do singing games. I use solfa and oral development, and then there's the rhythmic development, and then there's let's learn to play some chords on ukes, and let's use some tuned percussion, and let's and
Yes, and
and 30 minutes. However, I make time to make sure I do a little bit of the garage band, but boy, I feel I'd love to get into it more. And as for music play, you're actually one of the first people in the world to know this, but Denise and I have set up a little deal. I'm actually now selling music play membership through Crescendo for
oh,
Australians.
wonderful. Oh,
Yeah,
there you go.
so and they actually get it a little bit cheaper buying it from me if they're in Australia. So that's exciting. And I'm only just starting to explore it, but I could not agree more about the getting it so that the kids can access it. However,
Mhm.
nothing replaces, of course, a qualified music educator, but it's great to have these support materials. And one of the things I love about Denise, which is one of the reasons why I support her and why we are so aligned, basically, is that there's good pedagogy behind it. There's good
Yes.
sequence. There's a good understanding about children and what they should do and developmentally. And so, that's what's really excellent
Mhm.
about music play, I think. I just thought I'd add that little bit in because it is
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
special. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Oh, she's a force of a woman. I luckily met her in Canada when I was doing a talk
Mm.
over there, and what a wonderful advocate and influence on music education. I mean, she's a powerhouse.
Oh, she sure is.
Yeah,
She sure is. So all power to her. Let's hope she keeps doing this for another 20 years
indeed. Yeah.
at least. I agree. So that actually leads us nicely to advocacy. So
Mhm.
here in Queensland, we've had issues with the loss of some music programs, and we're working very hard on that. Some places in Australia do not have music educators. Um, and I really think it's important to tell the world that music education is important for our kids, for
Mhm.
every child, even if they aren't going to be a professional musician, every child. So I like with all of my guests to say, can I just get your perspective on how we can improve our advocacy?
Sure. Well, I always say that if you want to see young people at their best, watch them making music together. And so I think that we need to beat our own drum. I don't think a lot of us are. Uh, I mean, it doesn't take arrogance, but you have to be confident enough to say, "Hey, this is what I'm doing, and it's bloody awesome." Yeah, and you need
Yeah.
to take note of it. So I think it's important to beat your own drum, and then to come back to the seven habits. You have to be very proactive. I think we need to try and immerse ourselves in every possible aspect of the school, engage with every other subject, engage with other teachers, perform everywhere possible, put on concerts, put on lunchtime listening clubs. Just make yourself indispensable, not just to the school but to the kids. And then I think it's really important to involve parents at every opportunity. I think deep down, most parents want their kids to have music. I think a lot of parents understand the importance of it, but they don't necessarily know how to go about it, and how to be vocal about it. So I think really getting the parents on side is important also. But I think coming back to the seven habits, I think you've got to be proactive. Beat your own drum, get into every aspect of the school so they can't get rid of you. But also think win-win. There has to be give and take. You know, invariably it's always comes down to money. But for me, it costs more not to teach music than to teach it, because the other problems that come up because the kids aren't learning music outweigh the cost of actually providing it. But that's another whole conversation. So, you need to think win-win, but also understand why what we're doing is being challenged. Is it a lack of understanding? Is it a lack of awareness of what we do actually work? People think music is expensive. Well, the voice is free, body percussion is free. There's lots of amazing things that can be done without needing money. And also that idea of synergize, that creative collaboration. Again, embed yourself into the community around you, because schools want to be connected to the community around them. They want good news stories. Again, music's one of the first things to be taken away, but it's usually the first thing on the front of the prospectus or the advert online for the school. So it's this weird mix of getting everyone to understand where we fit. But yeah, just beat your own drum and make yourself indispensable, and let people see the young people making music. Because whenever the powers that be come to a concert, they always go, "Oh wow, that was amazing." Well, yes, that amazing happens every day.
Mm-hmm.
So the more people can see that amazing, the more people can see young people making music, the more they get it. But sadly, it's never going to end. It's a battle we're always going to have. So it's about having that passion and sharpening the saw so that you can keep the fight going.
Love it. And you brought in another habit too. I love
Yeah.
it. And the beating the drum, I'm assuming that's an intentional pun. No?
Well, it just came.
Just
These
works.
things just come.
It just works. Beating a drum.
Yeah.
I think all music
Yeah. Beat your
educators
own
should
drum.
beat their drum.
Or
And
blow your trumpet, whichever one you want. But
blow,
yeah, just
blow your own trumpet. But it's true. Too many of us are too quiet about the amazing things we do, because
absolutely.
we don't want to come across as arrogant. But do you know there's a way to do it without being arrogant. And it's
And
about
that's
celebrating the kids. If you come in there and go, do you know what they can do? So it's not so much about you, positioning it from the advantages and the wonderfulness of the students.
yeah, let the students do the talking for you, or the performing. As I say, the more people see kids perform, the more they just realize the wonder of it.
Mm.
So yeah, that's my advice. There's no one right answer, but I think it's about that proactiveness and just showing the world what we do, because what we do is awesome.
Wonderful. And it is full stop. It is. Oh, good heavens. We're up to our soapbox bit. So
Right.
you
You like a
get
good soapbox?
yes. Well, I think sorry, X. You're still on it, even though it's called X.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll always refer to it as Twitter. I'm
Yeah.
currently deciding if I should change the logo on my presentations, but I think people will think, why has he got a weird X on his page? It's
Yes.
yes, it'll be Twitter for the foreseeable future.
I think so. And I think your presentations need to have the little blue bird, because
Yes.
that's where it all happened,
Well, exactly.
for you.
And it's so
So
much more friendly than an X. A bird is so more inviting than
it is.
an
It's a
X.
bit like X.
Anyway, I'm not a
So
graphic designer, but
yeah, but what I mean is your soapbox is sort of Twitter in a way, because it's almost like when you tweet out your thoughts, you are a bit on your soapbox. But I like to say at the end of my chats with amazing people like you is to finish off this interview, you get to tell the world something that's really important for you to say. So I'll leave you on your soapbox.
sure. Well, I think it's quite simple. We're only here once, and every moment is precious. And that's really been brought home to me during the pandemic. Sadly, my only brother died at the age of 41, and I had to watch his funeral on Zoom from Scotland. And it just reminded me of the preciousness of life, and the one moment you're here, the next moment you're not. And then if we think about that in a teaching perspective, I always say to the kids, happy Wednesday. And they go, oh, happy Wednesday. And I say, how's your Wednesday been? And I say, well, it's been the best Wednesday this week. It's the only Wednesday. It's the only Wednesday we get. And I think, when we talk about getting bogged down in work and the challenges we have, you only get today once. You only get that 30 minutes with your class on that one day once, and then it's gone. I think we need to grab every moment by the horns and just make the most of it. And I think we need to remember that every moment we spend with our young people could be the moment that makes them fall in love with music for the rest of their life, or makes them fall out of love with music for the rest of their life. And so for me, yeah, we're only here once. Every moment is precious, and we need to make the most of it, because as we know, it was just one moment for each of us possibly that set us on this wonderful path to being a music teacher or whatever we did. Again, as I say, a lot of the people we teach don't go on to be successful musicians, but they go on to be successful people, and it's because of these moments that they have with us. And so my soapbox is just live life to the fullest, make every lesson like it could be the lesson that changes a kid's life, and just enjoy the ride.
That is a fabulous way to finish. Thank you so much for giving us your time, Vaughan.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
As we know, laughter relieves stress. Don't lose sight of the funny side of life. I once heard this really good joke about amnesia, but I forgot how it goes. Thank you so much for watching our Crescendo Music Education podcast. For more information about all things crescendo, including membership and music education resources, visit us at crescendo.com.au. Don't forget to like and subscribe.